My name is Emily. I bought a house so my mom could live comfortably. A month later, she locked me out so my brother could move in. Everyone said it was family business. It wasn't. If something like this happened to you, share your story in the comments. The laptop was open on the dining table, a spreadsheet frozen mid-scroll. My coffee had gone cold without me noticing. That was how the morning started. Normal, forgettable, the kind of weekday I liked. The house was quiet in the practical sense, just the hum of the air conditioner and my keyboard. I had bought this place a month earlier so my mom wouldn't have to worry about rent anymore. That thought hadn't even crossed my mind yet. Linda walked in from the hallway without saying my name. No knock, no warning. "Jason needs a place to stay," she said, setting her purse down like she always did. "You can manage somewhere else." The sentence landed flat, like it had been rehearsed too many times already. A laugh came out before I could stop it. "Okay," I said. "Very funny." She didn't smile. Instead, Linda reached into her bag and placed a small ring of keys on the table. They weren't mine. They were newer, heavier. "The locks were changed this morning," she said. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The front door handle turned behind her. Jason stood there with 2 cardboard boxes stacked against his chest. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at the table either. "It's temporary," he said, as if that explained the boxes, the keys, or the timing. One box slid against the wall as he stepped inside. Linda moved it out of his way with her foot. Efficient. Practiced. The hallway already looked different. Shoes lined up that weren't mine. A glance toward the living room caught something off. My jacket wasn't on the chair where I'd left it. A small stack of mail sat on the counter, neatly squared. On top was an envelope from the electric company, addressed to Linda. My name was gone. "What's this?" I asked, tapping the envelope. "Utilities needed to be in my name," she said. "Paperwork's already handled." The phone on the table buzzed once. A missed call flashed across the screen. An Austin notary office. The call ended before I could touch it. At the front door, the security panel blinked. A note taped beside it read, "System maintenance." Linda noticed me staring. "It's nothing," she said. "You always get anxious about details." Jason shifted his weight, boxes scraping the floor again. Someone's laughter drifted in from outside. Neighbors, maybe. Life continuing on schedule. "Don't forget to leave your old keys," Linda added, her tone polite now. "No sense in confusing things." The door shut behind me with a sound that wasn't loud enough to be dramatic. My phone started vibrating again. Work messages. The first call came before noon, then another. By mid-afternoon, my phone felt heavier than my bag. Family numbers I hadn't seen in weeks lit up the screen, one after another. "Your mom said you left on your own," my aunt told me. "She's been through enough," a cousin added. "It's still family property, Emily." The words repeated with small variations, like a script passed around. No one asked where I slept. No one asked why the locks had been changed. Each call ended the same way, with advice I didn't ask for and sympathy I hadn't earned. Work didn't stop. Deadlines didn't care. The next morning was spent at a corner table in a coffee shop near my apartment rental, laptop balanced between a sugar jar and a napkin holder. A coworker recognized me while waiting for her order. "Working remote today?" she asked. "For now," I said. She nodded, satisfied with that. The question didn't come with concern, just curiosity, and I was grateful for the difference. Messages from Linda came through sporadically, never direct. Group texts with family members, emails forwarded twice. Her version traveled faster than mine. According to her, emotions had run high, I'd misunderstood, and space seemed like a good idea for everyone. Jason posted photos that afternoon. The living room looked unfamiliar, rearranged. The image was slightly blurry, a couch corner and a folding table with pizza boxes. Someone had commented, "Finally home." He didn't correct them. I drove back to the house the next day for paperwork. Nothing dramatic, just tax documents, insurance records, things I needed. The door didn't open. The key scraped uselessly against the lock. A neighbor watched from across the street, pretending not to. A patrol car pulled up 10 minutes later. It's a family dispute, the officer said after glancing at his tablet. We can't force entry. But my name is on the— I understand, he interrupted gently. You'll need to work it out. Work it out meant leaving. Again. The title company office sat between a nail salon and a dry cleaner. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant. Rosa Martinez greeted me without surprise, like she'd expected the visit. Have a seat, she said, already pulling up records. Her screen reflected off her glasses as she scrolled. Fingers paused, then paused again. You're still the sole owner, Rosa said. Nothing's been transferred. Relief didn't show up the way movies suggest. No rush, no smile, just a steadier breath. There was an appointment scheduled last week, she continued, canceled an hour before, under Linda's name. That explained the missed call. Rosa printed the file and slid it across the desk. Don't argue with her, she said. Document everything. The stack felt heavier than it looked. At least the system still knows who owns the house, Rosa added, tapping the top page once. Outside, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't family. A notification from the city registry confirmed a change of address. Jason Carter, residence updated. A text followed from Linda. We should all talk this weekend, she wrote, at the house. The message read like an invitation. It wasn't. The timing wasn't accidental. Neither was the location. I watched people come and go from the dry cleaner, arms full of plastic-wrapped clothes. Normal errands, normal days. The paperwork stayed tucked under my arm as I walked back to the car, the edges pressing into my side with each step. Another message came in, this one from a cousin. Hope you're calming down, it said. Family meeting might help. The search started at a borrowed desk with bad lighting and a stack of papers spread wider than necessary. Emails first, then bills, then bank statements tied to the house. Nothing dramatic, just tabs opening and closing, dates lining up, amounts matching what they were supposed to match. The kind of work that looks calm from the outside and isn't meant to be fast. An old folder sat at the bottom of my email archive. The subject line was generic enough to survive years without notice. Inside was a scanned document, slightly crooked, the edges gray from an office machine that hadn't been cleaned. My name was there. My signature, too. Power of attorney. I remembered signing it, years ago. Linda had said it would make things easier if she ever needed to handle paperwork while I was traveling. No pressure, no rush, just a favor, framed the way she framed most things. The timestamp told a different story. The file had been accessed recently. That explained the confidence, the keys, the phrase she'd dropped without thinking. Paperwork's already handled. The phone chimed again. An email from Linda, this one copied to half the family. The tone was calm, almost professional. Emily is escalating this unnecessarily, she wrote. I'm trying to protect everyone from legal trouble. Replies followed within minutes. Supportive, concerned, directed at her. Jason didn't reply publicly. His message came through privately. Can you stop, he wrote. You're making this worse. No explanation of how, no suggestion of what better would look like. Just a request dressed up as concern. The house sat 15 minutes away. Traffic cooperated like it always did when it shouldn't. Cars lined the street when I pulled up. Balloons were tied to the mailbox. Someone had taped a paper sign to the front window that read, Welcome home. The door opened before I knocked. Jason stepped aside without meeting my eyes. People are coming, he said. This isn't a good time. Linda was in the living room, adjusting a picture frame. The family photo hung a little crooked, the same one that had been there for years. She straightened it, then turned. You didn't tell me you were stopping by, she said. I'm here for answers. Now? She asked, glancing toward the kitchen where voices carried. During this? A hand slid into my pocket, fingers wrapping around my phone. The recorder was already running. You tried to use the power of attorney, I said. Her expression shifted just enough to notice. That was for emergencies, she said. You always knew that. And this was one? You're upset, Linda replied. You're reading things wrong. Jason hovered near the hallway, pretending to rearrange boxes that were already unpacked. You changed the utilities, I said. That was practical. You changed the locks. She smoothed the edge of the frame again, precise. You always like things documented, Linda said. I figured you'd appreciate the consistency. Laughter drifted in from the backyard. Someone popped open a drink. Music started, low and cheerful. I didn't do anything illegal, she continued, but if you keep pushing, I'll have to protect myself. By calling the family lawyer? Her mouth tightened. If that's what it takes. The front door opened again. 2 more guests stepped in, hands full, smiling until they noticed the tension. Linda's posture changed instantly, shoulders back, smile ready. This isn't the time, she said quietly, closer now. You're embarrassing yourself. I stepped back, not far, just enough. Outside, the noise sounded louder. The sign in the window peeled slightly at one corner, the tape losing its grip. Jason followed me to the door. You didn't have to do this, he said. The porch felt crowded now, strangers squeezing past, nodding politely. Someone asked if I was a friend. I didn't answer. The phone stayed in my hand as I walked to the car, the recorder still running, the screen warm against my palm. Voices carried from the house, overlapping, casual. The party was officially underway. Linda's last words followed me down the steps. I'll be calling the lawyer tomorrow. The notice came by email, flagged as urgent, the kind that forces itself to the top of the screen. The subject line mentioned insurance. The body was short, careful, written in language meant to sound neutral. Due to an active dispute regarding authorized control, the policy linked to the property had been temporarily suspended. No accusations, no explanations. Just a pause applied to something that had always been automatic. A second login attempt failed. The camera storage account rejected the password it had accepted for years. Reset links led nowhere. Customer support routed the call into a queue that didn't move. Linda hadn't just changed the locks. She'd reached into systems that weren't supposed to care about family arguments and slowed them down anyway. The formal paperwork arrived 2 days later. A letter from a law office I recognized by name alone. The phrasing was confident, almost bored. Petition to recognize shared family interest in the property. Jason's name appeared beneath Linda's, listed as a dependent resident, a witness, someone with standing, according to the document. The phone rang while I was still reading. Rosa didn't waste time on greetings. She filed, Rosa said. I know. She's using the old power of attorney as leverage, she continued. Not to take ownership outright, to delay. That detail mattered more than the rest. The signature hadn't been used to seize control. It had been used to slow everything down, to keep decisions suspended while the argument dragged on. So what happens now? I asked. Now it takes time, Rosa said. Weeks, maybe longer. Time was the part Linda always won. Jason called later that night. His voice sounded tired, practiced. They're saying you're being unreasonable, he said, that you won't let things settle. Things settled the moment the locks changed. You didn't have to escalate. I didn't file anything. A pause followed. Then the line went quiet, not disconnected, just abandoned. Another email arrived before morning. Temporary freeze confirmed. No changes to title, insurance, utilities, or access permissions until the dispute was reviewed. The house existed in a holding pattern, untouchable, unmovable. Rosa called again that afternoon. Papers shuffled on her end of the line. This is her pattern, she said. She applies pressure by waiting people out, drags emotions into systems until everyone's exhausted. And there's nothing to do? Not fast, she replied. You can't force speed into a process designed to slow conflict. The words weren't comforting, but they were honest. Work continued around the edges. Meetings were taken from borrowed spaces. Emails sent, tasks completed. No one asked questions. Productivity made a decent shield. The family chat stayed active. Links to articles about reconciliation, messages about how hard this was for Linda, a reminder about the weekend meeting, still scheduled, still at the house. A printed copy of the freeze notice lay on the table. Dates circled, deadlines highlighted, every action deferred by someone else's signature. The planner came out of the bag, pages already marked with trips and timelines that no longer applied. One by one, plans were crossed out. Not angrily, methodically. A blank page followed. The pen hovered, then touched down. Documents to secure, accounts to separate, contacts to limit. The list didn't need decoration. It didn't need explanations. It only needed space to grow. Another notification buzzed on the phone. A confirmation from the city office. Address unchanged. Status pending. The apartment came furnished, which sounded helpful until it wasn't. Everything I owned stayed zipped inside 2 suitcases by the door. I never unpacked them. Shirts stayed folded the way they'd been folded weeks earlier. Shoes lined up like they were waiting for instructions. It felt temporary because it was temporary, and keeping it that way took less effort than pretending otherwise. Mornings followed a pattern. Coffee from a mug that wasn't mine. Laptop on a table meant for someone else. The view never changed. Neither did the silence between messages that used to fill the day. What finally slowed me down wasn't another email from Linda or a family update pretending to be concerned. It was the power of attorney, printed out and spread across the table. The paper looked smaller than it had any right to, the signature at the bottom too familiar. Signing it had felt responsible at the time, helpful, one less thing for everyone to worry about. Linda had always kept the originals anyway, birth certificates, insurance forms, old contracts. Whenever I needed something, she'd hand over a copy and say she'd keep the rest safe. Jason had needed help just this once, more times than I could count. Rent gaps, missed payments, a car repair that couldn't wait. It was always framed as temporary, always urgent, always solved by someone else stepping in. Usually me. None of it had felt wrong while it was happening. It had felt normal. Quiet cooperation, taking care of things without needing credit. That was the mistake. Believing that staying calm and handling responsibility would earn a place in the conversation later. The phone rang while the papers were still out. Rosa didn't bother with small talk. "There's something you should know," she said, "before this goes any further." She explained that a couple had reached out weeks earlier through an independent agent asking about the house. They'd liked the location, the price. They'd backed off when the situation turned messy, but they hadn't disappeared. "You still have full authority to sell," Rosa said. "Nothing about the freeze changes that." The word landed heavier than expected. "Sell," I repeated. "Yes." That option hadn't come up in any family discussion. It wasn't part of Linda's version of events. It didn't fit into Jason's plans or anyone else's expectations. "There would be consequences," Rosa added. "You know that." I do. Selling meant there would be no house to argue over, no shared asset to fight about, no reason to keep pretending this was about misunderstandings instead of control. "And if you do nothing," she continued, "this drags on. That's what she wants." After the call ended, the apartment felt smaller, not uncomfortable, just defined. The suitcases stayed where they were. The papers went back into their folder, except for one. A blank legal pad came out instead. The pen didn't hesitate. What mattered wasn't proving anything to people who had already decided what they wanted to believe. It was making sure the truth existed somewhere that couldn't be talked over or rewritten. Another message arrived from the family group chat, someone suggesting mediation, someone else reminding everyone to stay calm. The pad filled steadily. Call new agent, separate accounts, change emergency contacts. The list wasn't emotional. It didn't need to be. Each line represented a decision that didn't require permission. Rosa called again later that afternoon. "If you want, I can connect you with a broker I trust," she said. "No pressure." "I want that," I replied. The meeting took place the next morning in a small office that smelled faintly of printer toner. The broker slid the contract across the desk and explained the terms without embellishment. Authority, timeline, signatures. "This makes it official," he said. The pen rested between my fingers longer than necessary, not because of doubt, but because of weight. Once signed, there would be no version of events where this went back to how it had been. No shared holidays, no casual drop-ins, no pretending the lock change had been a misunderstanding. The first confirmation came from a place Linda didn't expect me to look. A bank statement buried in an old shared folder showed regular transfers, small enough to avoid attention, steady enough to form a pattern. Same account, same recipient. Jason. The dates went back years. Rent gaps, credit cards, a loan payoff labeled MISC. The house wasn't the beginning, it was the last piece. Rosa helped connect the dots without dramatizing them. She laid documents side by side and let the sequence speak for itself. She's been covering him for a long time, she said, quietly. That explained the urgency, the confidence, why Linda hadn't asked, only announced. The house wasn't about housing, it was leverage, a way to keep Jason close, dependent, manageable. Other details shifted into place. The power of attorney hadn't been forgotten in a drawer. It had been kept active on purpose. The camera outage lined up with the day Linda met with a lawyer she'd known socially for years. The canceled notary appointment wasn't hesitation. It was testing the timing. This wasn't favoritism. It was maintenance. The scale widened with each call. Rosa confirmed Linda had spoken to the old listing agent weeks before I returned to Austin. A cousin's name appeared on a witness line, someone who'd always said they didn't want to get involved. They already had a narrative, Rosa said. You just walked into it. Linda moved faster once the sale paperwork was filed. An emergency petition landed the next morning, requesting an immediate pause on all transactions due to bad faith intent. The language was polished, confident, prepared. Jason's statement followed. According to him, I had promised he could stay as long as he needed, that the house had been meant for family use, that selling it now was retaliation. The version of events was clean, almost convincing. An email from a legal address arrived before lunch. Please be advised that proceeding under these circumstances may be construed as lack of good faith. No accusation, just a warning. Enough to stall things again. Calls went unanswered after that. Messages stayed unread. Linda didn't need to argue anymore. She'd shifted the conversation into rooms where emotions didn't matter, and time worked in her favor. The realization didn't come with shock. It came with clarity. This wasn't a family disagreement spiraling out of control. It was a long-running system that depended on me staying predictable, responsible, quiet. The mistake wasn't buying the house. It was believing that stepping in would change the structure instead of reinforcing it. Rosa called that afternoon. She's trying to scare you into backing off, she said. It might work, on paper. And if it does, then it drags or you wait her out. Waiting had never been the problem. Waiting was what she'd counted on. Another message from the family chat appeared, a reminder that everyone was worried, that this was hurting Linda, that Jason was struggling. The broker's number came up next. I answered before it finished ringing. The buyers are still interested, he said. They're asking if the house will be vacant. The question wasn't emotional, it was practical. A yes or no with consequences either way. Outside the apartment, traffic moved steadily. A couple argued quietly near the elevator. Someone laughed down the hall. Life continued, unbothered by freezes and petitions. The documents stayed spread across the table, no longer confusing. The story they told was complete now. Not kind, not accidental. Complete. Another email arrived, this one from Linda's lawyer, restating the request to halt the sale. The tone suggested patience, the kind that waits for exhaustion to do the work. The broker's message remained open on the screen, the question unanswered. Buyers are still interested. Vacant. The house looked exactly the way it had in the photos Jason posted. Folding chairs in the yard, a banner taped crooked above the garage, cars lining the street, people already laughing before they reached the front door. It was meant to look permanent, settled. I arrived when the noise was loud enough to cover footsteps. The broker came first, parking a few houses down. The buyers followed in a separate car, polite, uncertain, holding a folder between them like a fragile object. The notary walked up last, badge clipped neatly to her bag. A patrol car pulled in behind us and stayed idling. No one noticed right away. Jason was near the grill, drink in hand, smiling too broadly. Linda stood closer to the door, greeting people, managing the flow. She saw me when I reached the walkway. Her face tightened, then smoothed. "You're really doing this?" she asked. I said I would. She stepped aside, blocking the entrance with her body. "This is harassment," Linda said, loud enough for nearby conversations to slow. "You're abusing the system." The notary didn't wait for permission. She introduced herself and asked for a clear space to conduct business. The broker handed over the folder. The buyers stayed quiet, eyes moving between faces. The first document came out clean and flat. "This shows sole ownership," the notary said. "Emily Carter." Linda waved a hand. "That doesn't mean anything without context." The second document followed. "Purchase agreement," the broker added. "Executed and valid." Murmurs spread. Someone shifted a chair. Jason set his drink down hard enough to spill. "You can't sell this," Linda said. "This is family property." "It's not," the notary replied. Linda turned to the crowd. "She's doing this to punish us." No one answered. The patrol officer stepped forward, voice neutral. "Ma'am, we just need to confirm who has legal right to the property." Linda's voice rose. "I've lived here. My son lives here. She promised." Jason nodded quickly. "She said I could stay," he said, "as long as I needed." The notary flipped a page. "There's no lease, no agreement, no transfer of rights." Linda's hand closed around the back of a chair. "This is outrageous," she said. "You can't just show up with paperwork and throw people out." The officer glanced at the documents, then at the notary. "Everything appears in order," he said. The words landed heavier than shouting ever could. A cousin near the patio whispered to someone else, then looked at the cake on the table. "So," she asked softly, "should we bring the cake back to the car?" No one laughed. No one stopped her either. Jason stared at the floor. "I don't have anywhere else to go," he said. The officer spoke again, slower this time. "You'll need to gather your belongings." Linda stepped forward, finger pointed now. "You're choosing strangers over family." The buyers shifted uncomfortably. The broker kept his eyes on the paperwork. Linda's voice grew sharper. "After everything I've done for you." The officer raised a hand. "Ma'am?" And she didn't stop. "This is my house." The notary corrected her, calm and firm. "It isn't." That was when the mask dropped. The careful language disappeared. Linda's control slipped into something louder, harder to disguise. "You think you're better than us," she said to me. "You think money makes you right." Nothing answered that. There was nothing left to say. The officer gestured toward the door. "Let's start moving things out." Jason nodded once and went inside. The party unraveled quietly after that. People found reasons to leave. Plates were stacked. Music turned off mid-song. The buyers waited near the walkway. The broker reviewed final steps with the notary. Linda stood still, watching the front door like it might reopen if she stared long enough. Jason came back out carrying a box, then another. Each trip took longer than the last. The officer returned with a small set of keys. "These are for the new owners," he said, handing them over. The metal caught the light as it changed hands. Linda reached for them, then stopped. Her mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. The buyers thanked everyone awkwardly. The broker shook hands. The notary packed up her bag. Jason set the last box down near the curb and stood there, empty-handed. Linda didn't move. The officer asked if anyone needed assistance leaving. No one answered. Cars started pulling away one by one. The new owners turned toward the door, keys ready, while Linda remained frozen at the edge of the yard, watching the house change hands in real time, unable to follow, unable to stop it, as the lock turned and the door began to open. Once the sale closed, the rest unraveled quietly, without announcements or explanations. Linda didn't stay long after that afternoon. A storage unit receipt surfaced in a forwarded email from a relative who thought I should know. Boxes labeled in her handwriting, furniture wrapped in plastic. Temporary housing listed by the week. Jason lasted even less time. Without the house as a fallback, his problems stopped floating. A missed payment notice reached my inbox by accident, still linked to an old shared contact. Another followed, then another, each one sharper than the last. There were no more photos, no updates, just silence where confidence used to be. A single message came through from Linda a few days later. "I hope you're happy." No greeting, no name. The phone rested on the counter while the message sat there, unacknowledged, until the screen dimmed and locked itself. Work resumed its normal pace. Meetings filled the calendar again. Tasks completed. Calls returned. The sale funds cleared without ceremony, numbers aligning neatly in an account that only had one name attached to it. An email arrived confirming the transaction had officially closed. "Thank you for your patience." The line felt misplaced, almost polite, considering everything it summarized. The move happened 2 weeks later. Not dramatic, just necessary. A different state, a different zip code, new utilities, new emergency contact fields filled in with deliberate care. The apartment lease was signed with the same pen that had closed the sale, the deposit transferred without hesitation. Boxes were unpacked this time, slowly, intentionally. Shirts went into drawers, shoes lined up for use, not instruction. The place didn't feel temporary. It didn't need to. The last thing left was a small envelope tucked into the side pocket of my bag. Inside were the old house keys, useless now, but still mine to deal with. Evening settled in without asking permission. The apartment lights stayed on while the city outside moved through its routines. Traffic noise, distant conversations, a neighbor's television muffled through the wall. The envelope rested on the desk beside an open drawer. Paperwork filled most of the space. Contracts, receipts, a folded lease agreement. Everything labeled, sorted, accounted for. The phone buzzed once more, then went still. No new messages, no missed calls. The keys slid out of the envelope and onto the wood surface with a soft clink. They looked smaller than they used to, less important. The envelope went into the drawer first, then the keys, placed on top, not hidden, not displayed. The drawer closed with a firm, final motion, wood meeting wood without resistance, as the phone screen faded to black and stayed that way.